And so the first thing that we do with a business owner is try to do a personal financial plan, because by doing the financial plan, we can then determine what they need in terms of proceeds from a sale, what they need to be able to maintain the lifestyle that they're looking to maintain. And oftentimes you'll find that we'll do a financial plan and realize that the business that they've been operating may be creating a lot of income, but it may not have the transferability to generate enough proceeds from a sale to maintain that lifestyle. And that's been particularly true with a lot of boomers who have small companies that make a lot of money, but what we call a lifestyle business. They've done it in order to maintain that income, but they really don't have a business that's saleable. And so they get to, they're 65, they've been making, let's just say, $500,000 a year. And they decide, okay, I'm ready to do something else now. They look to sell it, and the business might only be worth $1 million. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're only selling for $1 million, you can't maintain a $500,000 a year lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So that creates what we call the wealth gap, what you need to maintain that lifestyle versus what your business will generate through a sale. Yeah, once you determine that wealth gap, then that really sets you up to understand, okay, what do we need to do to the business to either increase the value, the transferability, or in some cases, we're just going to work long.
How much of that do you see where you're working with owners that have a misalignment around what they think they should get and what the business is really worth?
It's very, very common for owners to not have a good idea of what their business is worth, unless they happen to be in a business where there's a lot of transactions, where it's easy for them to kind of calculate. But typically owners sometimes they'll have an inflated view of what they're worth, because they don't see the risk factors, they don't see the holes in that in what they're doing.
Yeah, we talk a lot about that. We've talked about those kinds of things. What should we be doing better as advisors, though, Mark, to help owners, to help them so we don't see this as much? What should we be doing better?
Well, I think the first thing is trying to be absolutely brutally honest with the owner about the different factors and understanding kind of what long-term goals and objectives. Again, a lot of owners, they're kind of set on status quo, and they make a good income. They're never really thinking about the back end.
Right.
But even if an owner is not thinking about exiting the business, they need to have a succession plan in place. Because you deal with the 5 Ds, death, disability, divorce, distress. And so you deal with those. That can happen to anybody, anytime.
Yeah.
And so you really need to have a succession plan. A lot of owners don't really want to think about that.
Boy, that just hit home in even a little bit of a different way. I was just introduced to some gentlemen that, gosh, I just thought the world of, but they were way too early on in their business for me to feel like I was going to add any value to them. But I kind of said, who's on your advisory team? And has your attorney, do you have a partner agreement? Do you have insurance on each other? And they looked at me and I said, you don't have a partner agreement? If you die, do you want to be in business with his wife? You guys have to figure this out, because and figure it out now while we're at the beginning of the business relationship. I mean, they're maybe 18 months or just a little bit longer than that into their relationship. Figure it out now, so that while we're still assuming the best of each other and we haven't really hit any of those kind of rocky periods in the relationship. And it wasn't 3 weeks later that I found out that one of them went on vacation and had a heart attack. And they had not done that. They had not. I mean, people have said to me before, when should I think about selling my business? And I say, the day you open the doors, you should be thinking about how I'm going to exit. And you should be thinking about all of these scenarios, and you should be getting in sync with your partners and making sure that you all have the same priorities, right? About what that might look like. So that's one of our first conversations with people, especially if there are multiple owners, is to get alignment around what a good exit means to each of them. and they're not always on the same page. Matter of fact, often they're not on the same page.
That's very true.
Yeah. So, so when we get to an exit, what should my wealth manager be doing for me as a part of that team?
Well, as whether it's an exit planning or succession planning, quite frankly, I think your wealth manager really should be initiating and asking these types of questions. And I have asked very recently, as I was sitting down with a couple, he owns a service business, and I looked at him and said, "What happens to her if you get hit by a bus?" And he got this pale look on his face and said, "Oh God, she's in trouble." And I said, "All right, so what do we do to fix that?"
Yes.
And so we started a process with them of of going through evaluation of the company and starting to look at how do we put a succession plan in place. So I think the part of a good wealth manager's role is to help you with risk management on the personal side.
Yeah.
But on the personal side, that means asking the questions about your business to make you think what things we need to do to protect ourselves, and then to help to then assist with helping you put together a team that can handle all of these different scenarios.
The ability to plan for succession, I oftentimes talk to people about the difference between a practice and a business, right? I've been in practice for a long time, but what people buy usually is me. They buy my experience, and if I decide to retire or I get hit by a bus, the business is over because I am the business, right? And so in an actual business that's not a practice, you have to be able to have a succession plan for yourself, and the business needs to run to a certain extent without you in the day-to-day. We've talked about this with everybody I've spoken with on these things. You have to get out of the day-to-day and be the brain power behind working on the business, but not working in the business.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And that is a decision to make, because some people are satisfied with running a quote lifestyle business, basically where it provides an income, but they're not really looking to build any kind of wealth.
Or sell it, right? Because they are the business. And I make it sound like it has to be a relatively small business like mine, but I have friends who owned a hugely successful construction business, but they really, again, were the majority of the business. And so when they were ready to retire, there was nothing really to sell. They just closed it. That's not all construction businesses, right? So it really depends how you set your business up and how you plan for your exit very early on.
Yeah, and you can pivot. You might have run a lifestyle business for the last 10 years, but you may have the ability to adjust and start creating value.
And that's where
instead of just worrying about income creating value.
That's where we step in. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
What do you wish I would have asked you about that I didn't ask you? Is there anything like is there like top tips or anything?
No, I said there is this difference between making money and creating value and within a business. And I think that's something that is really hard to understand, going back to the separation of a business and personal. There are certain things you can do within a business to create value versus just generating income.
And we talk about that. We talk about those specifically a lot. One is the owner is not too integral to the success of the business. One is there's a succession plan. One is there are processes in place. One is your client mix is diverse in industries and sizes. Anything you can do to make your clients sticky, contracts you have with your vendors. These are the things that create value. You said value, I call it wealth in a business, that are risk mitigators for buyers and the things that buyers look for.
And one of the things we found that can be very helpful for small business that is very often overlooked is the concept of a CFO. Most small businesses don't have the size to be able to bring on a CFO. So they use either a bookkeeper or an accountant. But a bookkeeper, an accountant, even a controller typically are all looking backwards. They're looking at what's happened and reporting it, filing the taxes, etc. Where a CFO looks forward, and a CFO can, helps with planning, helps with analytics, and that side of it. And so I would recommend for a lot of small businesses, even if you're not at a size to bring on a full-time CFO, that you can hire a fractional CFO
We introduced
that has that.
Yep, we introduced this. In fact, I should probably have one of these conversations with a fractional CFO so they can explain what that looks like. We have probably 4 fractional CFOs that we recommend into our clients. And they're that person, that forward-thinking person.
Right.
Yeah.
Most small business owners don't really have anybody that they can talk to, bounce ideas off of, etc. Because typically they can't do that with their staff or their employees. A lot of them don't want to take the business home and have that conversation with their spouse. But having a CFO, someone of that caliber, to be able to have those discussions with, we found can be very helpful to our clients.
And they ask a lot of the questions that we ask, right? Which is, you forecasted your business to do this. How do you know that? Show me where that comes from. You show me how you feel so confident with that happening, right? And I recommend those guys all the time. I think they're so valuable to a small and mid-sized business owner. Yeah. And they work across industries. It doesn't really matter what industry you're in. I have some that I know some that have very kind of specific industries that they like to work in because that's their area of expertise. But by and large, I think a fractional CFO is a great idea. Anything else?
No, I will go back to selecting a wealth manager. And a couple of things I would add to that would be, a lot of it is about chemistry, because it should be a long-term relationship. It's not a sales transaction. So you want somebody that you're very comfortable talking to. It also needs to be a collaborative process. While you're looking for the wealth manager to make recommendations, make decisions, it needs to be a collaborative process where they really are continually being updated with your goals, your needs, what concerns you, your worries, those kinds of things. And it needs to be a collaborative process.
Yeah.
And the last thing I would say is also, don't always chase return. It's not about getting the highest return. It's about getting the highest risk-adjusted return. And risk is something that varies from client to client. So a firm needs to be able to adjust the allocation and a portfolio to fit that client. And even within a client, let's say within a couple, his risk tolerance and her risk tolerance may be very different. And that, here again, becomes a collaborative process of understanding what works for the client.
Yes. Yeah. What else, Mark? Is there anything that you think is important for business owners to know?
I think we've hit the highlights.
Okay. Okay. Tell people how to get in touch with you if they're looking for a wealth manager.
Well, we would love to talk about what we do and what makes us a little different. And you can reach me at mparker@vipwealth.com, or you can call me 404-229-5413.
And you work nationwide?
Yes, we've got clients in over 40 states.
Okay. All right. How come those other 10 states don't like you?
Well, we just haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, you haven't gotten there yet. Okay. All righty.
But
I appreciate
we deal with a lot of founders and small business people, and would love to be able to help.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your experience and your wisdom. And I think these kinds of conversations are important. I find that a lot of business owners are under-resourced because they're just so head down, being great at what they do in their business.
Yeah.
And one of my goals is to just make sure that we are bringing great resources to the table for these.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Founders, small business people, they tend to throw themselves in their business. And a lot of times they'll let their personal stuff kind of suffer because of it.
Yeah.
And that really becomes our role, is to come alongside them, be able to help them on the personal side so that they know somebody's watching out for them on the personal side, so that they can then turn around and focus on their business.
Yeah. Thanks again, Mark. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.